Welcome everyone to the March meeting of the New York City Transit Authority, also known as the Subway and Bus Committee for short. Thank you, board members, for giving up so much of your day job time to come here for unpaid public service. We appreciate it. I hope everybody appreciates it. Thank you very much. Do we have public speakers? Hearing none, the minutes are attached to the materials from our last meeting. Does anybody have any additions or corrections? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve them. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are adopted. It now gives me great pleasure to recognize the interim Chief Executive Officer of the MTA, the President of the New York City Transit Authority, MABSTOA, and Staten Island Rapid Transit Operating Authority, all of which is the same person, fortunately, Tom Prendergast.
Thank you, Mark. And I'll turn over the operations report, the first of which is subways from Carmen Bianco.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Subway performance results for the 12-month period ending January of 2013 are as follows. We'll start with weight assessment and OTP. I'm happy to report that we continue to see gains in weight assessment, which increased from 78.3% in January of 12 to 79.6% in January of 13. It's an increase of 1.3%. This reflects our strong commitment to providing riders with reliable service at regular intervals. This accomplishment is significant given the many challenges we face day in and day out, not the least of which is increased ridership. Year over year, overcrowding delays were primary drivers in increases in delays and decreases in OTP on the 2 and 4 lines. Despite these increases in delays, system-wide weekday weight assessment continues to improve, including the 2 and 4 line. Moving to Thank you, sir. Moving to Fast Track. In 2012, the Fast Track initiative proved to be very successful. Early performance measures indicated reduction in incidents and delays in the corridors where significant work took place to address maintenance needs. Plans for 2013 include nearly twice as many Fast Track occasions at new locations both inside and outside the central business district. In the month of January, we ran 3 Fast Track programs, one in each the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Manhattan. We saw results which have become the hallmark of Fast Track: significant work completed, low employee accident rates, and high levels of productivity. We're pleased with Fast Track's continued success, even as it nearly doubled in size in reaching out across the boroughs. Moving on to Superstorm Sandy mitigation and some of the work we're doing in that regard. As previously reported, the useful life of many metallic and electromechanical systems and components will have their useful life reduced as a result of salt water submersion, causing accelerated failure rates. Mitigation and recovery investment projects are planned and under development. I raise that issue because as we are fully up and running by and large for the most part, except for a few key areas, we continue to see trouble relating from the storm, from the corrosive nature of that salt water. We had 2 of those experiences last week in the Montague Tube, where both morning rush hours back-to-back, both morning rush hours back-to-back, we had problems get in the way of trains and delayed trains for 15-20 minutes on each day. So it continues to come about, and we need to get moving on the defect repairs. Moving on to the February blizzard. In 2011, if you recall, right after the blizzard of January 26 of 10, our winter operation plan was modified to include a new Plan 5, which is a declared snow emergency. The plan provides for orderly suspension of service on line segments susceptible to weather-related problems to allow for snow removal. During the weekend from Friday, February 8th to Monday, February 11th, we prepared for Winter Storm Nemo and called for a Plan 5 due to the forecasted snow and wind conditions. The plan was executed flawlessly. The fleet was moved underground, and adequate levels of service was maintained throughout the weekend. I raised that because we had to go through all that effort. The very tail end of that, the storm did not hit the city the way it was anticipated, but there was an awful lot of work that had to go into the planning process to make sure that we were positioned should that storm have come in the way we expected. It would have been a considerable amount of work for us. Moving on to mean distance between failure in January, the MDBF increased as compared to January of 12 at 186,830 miles. It was up 7% from 174,687 in January of 12. The 12-month average was 162,993. That was down 4.9% from 171,314 for the preceding 12 months. Key performance indicator system-wide KPI was 82.7. That's up 0.1% from 82.6 in January of 12. The PES survey, Passenger Environment Survey, KPI was 90.9, also up 0.1% from January of 12. And Staten Island Railways PES KPI was 92.2. That's up 7.1% from 85.1 in January of 12. Moving on to overtime report. In 2012, the Department of Subways spent $141 million in unscheduled overtime against a final estimate budget of $135 million. $5 million of the variance is attributed to additional Superstorm Sandy expenses related primarily to infrastructure work and A-line crew supplements. Overall, the key 2012 overtime drivers for the Department of Subways were Superstorm Sandy, coverage for special events, critical maintenance and emergency response, coverage for critical operating vacancies to preserve service levels, and addressing a backlog of signal inspections and maintenance. In 2013, Sandy-related overtime expenses are expected to continue. During the first 6 months of 2013, overtime will continue to be required to address vacancies in train operators, signal maintainers, and signal helper titles. Although aggressive hiring and training in these areas should bring down the overtime spending by the third quarter of 2013. And with that, if there take any questions.
All right, time for questions. Alan?
Okay, well, this is the first of several attaboys. Governor Cuomo announced on Friday, I believe it was, Hurricane Sandy mitigation measure, the reopening of the old South Ferry terminal. And I want to not only thank the governor, but make special mention of Tom Prendergast, who, after originally suggesting that it wasn't possible, went down and looked for himself, and has now come to the aid of tens of thousands of Staten Island commuters by eliminating that walk. I understand that it's going to be operational in early April?
Early April. Actually, my staff came back to me and told me I was wrong. I'll be honest with you. They told me that they could do it. I asked them to do an assessment, and they did it, and that's why we made the decision to do it.
Well, on behalf of the Borough of Staten Island, we're most grateful and pleased that the Transit Authority and the state came through in this way. So thank you, Tom.
When was the last time previously you were wrong?
That I've reported on? Many times.
Anybody else, Jeff?
You have mentioned something about getting ready for Winter Storm Nemo and going through those processes, and then, oops, it didn't happen. Is there some sort of objective measurement or something that's going to kick into gear? Because this happens one or two more times and it doesn't happen. Not saying you guys, but someone in the future may suggest, it's not going to happen, and then we not be prepared. If it's subjective or objective, I think that's a clear difference, because it sounds like you have to go through a lot of work just to kick into gear these protective measures.
Let me.
One of the things I want to say is that, and Carmen probably didn't elucidate it as clearly as we tried to internally. The storm hit. It actually hit further east than Long Island, and so we go through a process that starts. And actually, this was a painful lesson we learned after the December 26, 2010 storm. Is that you have to assume the seriousness that the storm is going to be at what the forecasters are telling you. You can always pull back from that point. But there comes a point about 2 days before where you've got to push buttons and you've got to start to put the plan in place and tell people that they can't be off. But in this case, the storm went further east, so it was still good that we did what we did.
And just to further Tom's comment, as the storm gets, we get the weather report every 4 hours. As the storm gets closer, we actually look at it every 2 hours. And it's in this storm, in this case, it was on a Friday. We're looking at that through the night to see if there's any changes. But there is a point where we have to make a decision. And based on the way that storm was tracking with the winds, they were talking of winds of 50, 60 miles per hour. There are certain actions that we have to put in place, and it requires us to get a lot of our managers strategically placed throughout the system. We have to, in the rail control center, we have to open up our incident command center. There's a lot to making sure that we're ready to meet it head on.
What triggers that? Is that winds? Is that snowfall? Is that
In this
rain?
case, it was a combination of both winds and
And
snowfall.
is that something that's documented that requires if you're getting a 35 miles per hour wind, you've got to do X?
Yeah, when we get to 39, we will begin to shut down outdoor operations.
All of the plans that we have for either winter storms or storms are predicated on a set of criteria
Right, okay.
that are objective and numerically based.
Yes, sir. Mr. Page.
When you're looking at your sort of routine, where you park trains and how you do business, is there some marginal amount that you could change in terms of your normal routine that would get you a little bit closer to storm preparedness on a routine basis without having to take extraordinary expense and extraordinary measures? It strikes me that there must be a continuum here in terms of, it's a nice warm day but not too hot in the middle of the summer and it hasn't rained for 2 weeks, between how you would run and how you might run in the winter before you get into your sort of emergency storm mode when everything gears in.
Either one of you can answer that question if you understand it.
No, I do, and we've looked at it as well, because every time we push the button, there's a certain set of costs that will go with pushing that button. If you wanted to describe the relationship...
Cost and wear and tear, I would imagine.
Cost, wear and tear, but cost to the operating budget.
Yeah.
And cost to employees.
Yes.
But it's probably more accurately predicted, it's probably more accurately represented as a step function, not as a linear continuum. Because whether you go to Plan 1, Plan 2, Plan 3, Plan 4, Plan 5, you have to do that in those steps. You can't do it halfway. And each one has an associated cost. The major cost is moving the fleet to locations that protect it from the elements. And the large yards are in low-lying areas that are subjected to not only flooding, but they're subjected to high wind drifts of snow. And so the worst position you can be in, other than damaging a fleet to water, is having a fleet trapped in a yard you can't get service out in the morning when the snow's gone. I mean, the snowfall has stopped, the snow hasn't left, but everybody's ready to go to work.
If you figured it out, could you park bits of the fleet away from those yards routinely?
We used to do that years ago, and the problem we had was graffiti, because the ability for our own people or the transit police to be able to police that is when they're in a confined location. Because in the 80s, when we laid up a large portion of the fleet in Brooklyn on an elevated structure, it got hit every night. And so if you remember, we expanded the yards at Coney Island and secured them with high-strength security fencing and actually put in a very aggressive security and policing effort to protect them.
And that is well coordinated between, my office and the transit police, where they know exactly where all the equipment's going to be laid up, and they have the ability to go out there and help us keep an eye on it.
Carmen, on your fast track report, you mentioned that there's more coming, and it'll obviously be in places that don't have parallel subway lines as a relief valve. Have you been able to ascertain whether this level of fast track has avoided some weekend GOs? I mean, is work that's being done on fast tracks the same in some cases that would have been done on a weekend GO, and therefore you don't have to do that particular GO?
Yeah, I don't think we're quite there yet, Andrew. What we're trying to do with our fast track initiative is to, look at all the work that we have, all the defects, all the work that needs to be managed between 2 points, and if you could think about all the pre-planning that has to go into getting all that material out there to replace rails and switches and station lighting and tunnel lighting, I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. It's pretty hard to do that and run a GO at the same time. You sort of get in each other's way. So, but we are looking at that, and as we have GOs, if there's a way to piggyback on a GO in order to get extra work done, we do that routinely. we're always looking for an opportunity to reduce costs and get in there and piggyback on a GO where we can get extra work done on the week, during that 55-hour period.
The majority of GOs are capital. The majority of fast track is maintenance.
It's maintenance.
I would like to give you a heads up. If you've been watching the numbers that we believe we're going to get in terms of recovery and mitigation funding in the billions of dollars, 4.7 for recovery and 4.1 for mitigation, and there's going to be in some cases for that first $2 billion a hard stop in terms of spending it in the first 2 years. So we're going to see, the problem we're going to have is how do we do that and keep the system running? Because we don't want to foolishly spend money, but we want to effectively spend that money in a very short period of time. So there are going to be greater outages. So it'll be difficult, but we'll try to manage that.
This is a repeat question. One of the thoughts that I had heard expressed when you started the fast track program was the possibility that it might impact favorably upon such delay factors as right-of-way and work gangs and the like. Have you gotten any evidence that it's done that? Because the numbers seem generally about the same on delays.
Yes, as a matter of fact, it has. There was a report I think we provided to this committee a couple of months ago that actually showed that delays on the last year's work were down by 5%, and that also one of the very significant factors were track fires were down by almost 50%. So we were seeing favorable results. You mean on the on last year's work? I'd have to go back and run the reports again, but I believe so.
Tell you why I ask you this, because if we are getting that kind of a benefit, it seems to me that the public ought to know that, because they are suffering a burden, if you will, and they ought to know why and how and what the benefits are, the concomitant benefits.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I hear you loud and clear, and I think we do try to do that. If you we're continually trying to ensure that the media is well aware of what we're doing and the results we're getting. The website is full of photographs and stories about how the work is going. We are trying to put that out there as often as we can. It's been a phenomenal program in terms of us being able to get a lot of work accomplished. The levels of safety are much higher. It's just all good signs all the way around as we look at the process.
One last thing, I'm sorry. I know you've looked at this and you've explained it, and that's how you arrived at the 10 p.m. start of the fast track program. New York City is pretty much a 24-hour place, and some people are just leaving, places of employment at 10, and 10 is the absolute drop-dead time you have to start these things, right?
Yes, and we were trying to get off the right-of-way to start that morning rush hour, too.
Right, of course.
At 5 a.m.
And how long do you need to get everything away so you can start up the rush hour? At least an hour, right?
If everything worked perfectly, we'll be on the tracks 35 minutes into 35 minutes after the hour. We'll have everyone down on the tracks. They have to go through safety briefings when they arrive at the job site. They have to, and then it's a matter of getting the equipment down from the street level or wherever they're getting it from. And they're able to go to work 35, 40 minutes into the
But a lot of the equipment is brought in by work trains, and you want
Right.
the work trains to be clear of the system by the start of rush hour. And the work trains are stored in a finite number of locations throughout the system. So if we would start later, we would end up with hours of productivity that would seriously erode our ability to get done what we
So
get
if
done.
you're doing a fast track, hypothetically, in one of the boroughs other than Manhattan, are you going to start that at 10 p.m. at that point, or 10 p.m. when the last train has left the central business district, for instance?
It's always a factor of when the last train's going to come through. So even though we say 10 p.m., we may have 20 minutes of a delay just waiting for that last train to get through.
But hypothetically, let's say you were doing Utica to New Lots. Would that be 10 p.m. at Utica or 10 p.m. when the train left Manhattan?
I don't know if we've done the detailed service plans for all the fast tracks yet, but Peter, could you give a simple response?
Generally, it's 10 p.m. at the area. So yes, it would affect people leaving Manhattan at 9:30, and we try to communicate that. I mean, depending on how long where it is. But again, in all these locations, we try to make sure there's other means to get where you're going, and we try to encourage that. And we've been doing some So we've been making every effort to ensure it doesn't start before that. In some cases, shutting down, for example, the Nostrand Avenue line. Every train going down has to come back. So what we do is the last train gets parked down at the end of the line in the middle of the work zone, just so we can continue to provide service up till 10 o'clock.
Two interrelated questions. To what extent, if any, has this impacted on increasing overtime? And number two, have you found that the unions have been cooperative in accommodating this?
I'll start with the second question first. The unions are at the sites. They visit the work sites. They walk the various fast tracks, and the relationship has been strong in regards to fast track the initiative. So there's a significant level of communication that goes back and forth between the unions regarding that.
It certainly is safer for the workers.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's productive all throughout the evening. I mean, you don't have to worry about trains moving through the area. You could really plan your work in a different way, and you get a lot of work accomplished in a much safer manner. There is a small bit. I don't have the numbers with me. We can provide that later, but there is a small bit of overtime that's associated with it because some of the workers report directly to they're reporting directly to a job site, as opposed to a headquarters and then travel time coming in. So there is a small level, but I don't have those numbers with me today. We can provide those.
All right, folks, we have quite a long agenda. Before we move on to Darrell, I forgot in my irrational exuberance over the absence of public speakers to ask my usual rhetorical question: is there any change to the work plan?
Not this month.
Okay, Darrell, you're up.
Good morning. Today I will cover performance highlights for both fixed route and paratransit operations for the month of January 2013 and the past 12 months through January. I'll start with fleet reliability. For the month of January, the combined bus MDBF was 5,311 miles, or 28% greater than compared to 2012 January levels.
Whoa, how long are you going to keep that up?
As long as we can. When looking at our performance over a rolling 12-month period through January, combined MDBF was 4,808 miles, or an improvement of 41% when compared to the prior 12-month period. We are continuing our efforts to sustain a comprehensive maintenance program within existing resource levels. Next, I'll talk about our service indicators for the month of January. The percent of completed trips was 99.3%, which was up 0.5%. The percent of scheduled pullouts was 99.6% for the AM peak, which is an equivalent to January of 2012 levels, and 99.9% for the PM peak, which is up 0.1%. When looking at our performance over a rolling 12-month period, the percentage of completed trips was 98.9%, an improvement of 0.9%. AM pullouts were at 99.4%, which is up 0.8%, and PM pullouts were at 99.7%, which is up 0.5%. Regarding paratransit performance, in January of 2013, there was a slight increase of 0.5% in the total number of accessoride requests for service when compared to January 2012. For the full 12-month period, requests for service rose by less than 1% over the previous 12 months. Accessoride passenger no-shows increased very slightly by 0.1% in January 2013 when compared to the same period in 2012. But over the past 12 months, the overall level of no-shows declined by almost 0.5%. And that completes the bus operations report.
Not
Any
one
questions?
negative figure. I don't know whether you can keep doing this, Darrell, like this, you know. People are liable to ask you questions. We ready for Cheryl? Are we safe, Cheryl?
Ready, yes.
Alan, sorry.
Just a quick question. Is there any difference, or do you notice any difference in the performance rates between areas that are serviced by bus time versus the non-service areas?
Absolutely. Particularly in the indicator of weight assessment, regularity of service, We have satellite supervisors in satellite locations in both Staten Island and in the Bronx, where those are the two bus time implemented boroughs, with a focus on not just on-time performance, but really working on regular service and regular headways and weight assessment. So in those two boroughs, we've definitely seen an improvement over the others.
What's the next borough to go?
Manhattan.
You may have seen the article in the paper about bus time and also bus trek, and bus trek is the element that the supervision uses to be able to manage the service better on the street, and that's working very well. The other item Daryl didn't mention, but a week ago today we implemented an expanded Eagle Team operation through the Department of Security, and they're the folks that are actually doing an aggressive targeted effort on fare evasion in concert with the New York City Police Department, and the initial results are very good in the sense that we've woken up a sleeping public who thinks they can ride the bus for free, and we'll keep those efforts going.
Alan, just to piggyback off of what Tom said, when we implemented the first bus time exercise out in Staten Island, we realized that our customers were going to have more information than our supervisors. So at that point in time, we entered into what I would say was a phenomenal agreement with our partnership with CCNY to develop a management program. So that tool has really been a game changer for us, and particularly in those two boroughs, you can see the improvements.
Chuck?
Just as a follow-up to Alan's question, where you have seen the improvement, whether by bus time or the increased service, have you seen an increase in ridership?
I'd have to look at it from that perspective, but overall, over the last year, we've sort of stemmed the long-term decline in bus ridership. Where we have seen significant improvements is on our SBS routes, which are one resident in Staten Island, one resident in Manhattan, one resident in the Bronx. Particularly the one in the Bronx is also a beneficiary of bus time. So I could get back to you on specifics. I don't know if we can tie it specific to that, but I would say anecdotally, absolutely.
If there is any way in which you can demonstrate this, it seems to me it is an important way of getting the public to understand that not only are we trying, but in the process of doing so, we're giving them better service, and they should take advantage of that.
Right.
May I, Mr. Chairman? Daryl, with bus time in the two boroughs, do you find any positive impact with respect to bunching?
Yes, absolutely. It's specific to the bus trek management system. That is a focal point that the supervisors are looking at. Particularly, that's what they look for. And they reach out to the bus operators via radio system to either tell them to hold a light or speed up or slow down.
Daryl, what is bunching? Oh, never mind.
I'm sorry. Do we have any prospect of good enough information on Nassau's bus situation so that it might actually be sort of illuminating for ourselves?
I mean, how much do they still owe us?
No, in terms of how they run versus how we run. I mean, do we have, is there some moment that we think we could actually sort of look at it?
A number of people have asked about, reaching out to the operator that isn't currently there and sharing information in terms of how it's going, and they can give us information on what's worked well, and we can give them information on what worked well. So we are going to do that.
Okay.
But the basic issue is they thinned out, quite a bit. They thinned out the service quite a bit, quite substantially, I believe, when they changed over. So.
All right, we now turn to Cheryl Kennedy. Cheryl has handed out replacement pages to 7.89 and 7.91 to your books. Use these instead. This is an extraordinary step for Cheryl because the statistics in the amended pages are much better. Cheryl?
Yes. Safety results for subways were as follows. In the month of December, the customer accident rate increased by 22.8%, moving to 3.60 per million subway customers from a rate of 2.93 in December of 2011. The subway customer accident rate decreased by 3.1% over the previous 12-month period. There were 72 confirmed fires in the month of January, an increase of 26.3% from January 2012. However, over the last 12 months, fires decreased 17.4%. 100% of all fires were categorized as being low or average in severity for the month of January. The employee lost time accident rate decreased by 12.3% for the Department of Subways for the month of January 2013 as compared to January 2012, and decreased 6.2% for the rolling 12-month period. Safety results for NYCT bus and MTA bus were as follows. The combined 12-month rate for bus collisions per million miles traveled increased by 3.7% in January 2013. Bus collision injuries, however, decreased by 4% for the same period. The combined 12-month rate for bus customer accidents per million miles decreased by 6.2% in January 2013. The bus customer accident injuries also decreased by 4.5% for the same period. The employee lost time accident rate increased by 2.5% for NYCT bus, but decreased by 57.3% for MTA bus for the month of January 2013 as compared to January 2012. The rolling 12-month rate was down 4.9% for NYCT bus and 12.1% for MTA bus, respectively. The NYCT transit employee lost time accident rate decreased by 5.5% for the month of January 2013 versus January 2012. The rolling 12-month rate was down 3.11, down 5.3% from 3.29 the previous year.
Thank you, Cheryl. Any questions? I don't know why I keep doing that. All right. Next up is Chief Joseph Fox, whose report is so astonishing that it was the lead story in today's New York Daily News. Joe?
Favorable but not astonishing. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Thank you all. Good morning. During the first 2 months of 2013, crime within the transit system is down compared to the same period last year. Total major felonies are down 16%, or 81 incidents, 405 compared to 486, with the 44% year-to-date decline in robberies, 97 versus 174. For the month of February, total major felonies were reduced 31%, or 73 incidents, 162 compared to 235. Robberies were down 58%, or 50 incidents, with 36 compared to 86. And grand larcenies decreased 17%, or 23 incidents, 110 versus
No,
133.
that's astonishing.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Of the 405 major felonies year-to-date, 29% were committed in Manhattan, 16% in Queens, 36% in Brooklyn, and 18% in the Bronx. You may recall that in January I briefly introduced our efforts to analyze crime trends based not only on stations, lines, and transit districts, but working with precinct commanders and utilizing our resources jointly, deploying more officers to the targeted areas. In 2012, 1/4 of our major felonies occurred at stations within 7 of our 76 precincts: the 4-0, the 13th, the 7-5, the 7-3, the 8-4, the 108, and Midtown South. With this in mind, our focused prevention and enforcement efforts in these areas have been an important part of our 2013 strategy. The results have already been encouraging. As of March 3rd of this year, transit crime is down in 6 of these 7 precinct areas compared to the same period last year. A zone comprised of 2 neighboring Brooklyn precincts, the 7-5 and the 7-3, has been of particular focus this year. This zone contains 27 subway stations and spans Brownsville and East New York neighborhoods. The results here year-to-date have been positive as well, with the 7-5 precinct transit crime down 58%, 10 incidents compared to 24, and the 7-3 precinct transit crime down 63%, 8 versus 22. Results have been similar in our Midtown South precinct, which contains some of our largest transit hubs. home to the Times Square, Herald Square, Penn Station, and Grand Central complexes, results in Midtown South have also been positive. During the week of February 24th, we experienced only one felony in this entire area, a grand larceny related to a decoy operation that resulted with an immediate arrest. This approach has been particularly effective in combating violent crimes such as robbery. For example, during the last week of February, there were only 2 robberies throughout the entire subway system compared to 19 robberies system-wide during the same week the year prior. We'll continue with these joint efforts, examining these trends based on this precinct zone breakdown to complement our other crime reduction strategies. With this approach, transit crime in these 7 precinct areas has been reduced from representing 26% of the total transit crime in 2012 to 20% of our total transit crime for this year. I want to remind everyone of thefts from sleeping or otherwise inattentive passengers, which makes up 20% of our total grand larcenies, 57 of 277 this year. As we know, an expensive electronic device on an inattentive passenger's lap or protruding from their pocket is not only inviting for the seasoned criminal, but for the opportunist as well. In one such example, on February 2nd, Eric Williams was arrested after removing an Apple iPhone from a sleeping passenger aboard a northbound E-train at 34th Street, Penn Station. Officer Michael Thomas, while working in plainclothes and deployed in our late-night train patrols, witnessed the crime in progress and quickly arrested Williams and recovered the stolen phone. Williams had 6 prior arrests and was charged with grand larceny. We'll continue to focus on enforcement of transit rules that exist in part to minimize accidents. We often find that persons walking between train cars, for example, are also engaged in other criminal behavior. It's rather common for our officers to stop someone for such violations and find that they have extensive criminal histories, are sought on warrants, or are carrying a weapon. At 3 a.m. on February 22nd at the 14th Street and 8th Avenue station, Officer Alex Bradshaw observed a man walk between train cars in violation of New York City transit rules and regulations. Officer Bradshaw arrested Malcolm Reed for this violation and found him to be in possession of 2 stolen cell phones and 2 stolen credit cards. Reed was charged with possession of stolen property and is currently being held on $3,000 and $500 bail. $3,500. We will also continue deploying teams of crime prevention officers throughout the city, distributing crime prevention materials to our passengers. I believe communicating to our commuters that these thefts of electronics are often preventable is another critical component of combating these crimes of opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Prendergast, Carmen Bianco, Freddie Farrar, and the members of the board, and any questions or suggestions, I'd be glad to speak on it.
Obviously, congratulations, Chief, on the great job you and your men and women are doing. A couple of questions on the much publicized list of people that are banned from the subways. How many crimes do you have to commit before you get to make that list? And what can you do, what can we do to let the public know who's on that list and if we have a sighting of such a person?
Andrew, it's not actually a list. The article referring to, I believe it was in a Post last week, it's our parole stipulation program. And what that is, that's when somebody is stipulated, they have the usual parole conditions attached, like, with transit or city or street. And what happens if they have a pattern of committing a lot of their crimes in transit, they'll consider making a stipulation so that they have restrictions on times when they could use the system or whether to use it at all. So that's something that's not publicized, because these individuals aren't wanted, but transit officers, if they see them, have the right to identify them and report it to their parole officer. So whether they're stipulated depends on the types of crimes they've committed, the extent of their criminal record, and that's a decision made by the parole board. And thank you.
I have 2 questions, if I may. Do you have any statistics that would show us, by the time of the next meeting, let's say, the number of men and women assigned to your command who work in the transit system as compared with the comparable period last year? Do you have a sense now that it is more than, same as, or less than?
Well, throughout the year, with attrition and hires, that number changes. Where I can get you the exact number, but we have an
Give
increase.
us an average, because what I'd like to get a handle on is it a fact that by deploying more people to provide these services under your guidance, you are able to achieve these results?
We have an increase of approximately 1 or 2% now as the same period last year, but it's deployment is obviously important, but it's as I had said throughout these meetings, the cell phone usage and the electronics is clearly a policing challenge, and our job is to respond to new challenges, and we'll employ strategy after strategy, and some of those I mentioned here, the good work of the men and women of the Transit Bureau.
Well, let me ask you this. The number of arrests during this period has been declining, if you will. Do you have a reason for that, or is it that the bad guys finally are getting a message?
Well, the enforcement is to a great extent consistent with the criminal activity, and with a substantial reduction in some areas with crime, we would expect a reduction in enforcement.
Okay.
Thank you, Chuck.
I have a
Yes, Chief Fox.
Hi, Alan.
How are you, sir? As the buck stops where you sit, I associate myself with the remarks of the chairman and with Andrew and others. Congratulations on a good trend, and keep up that good work. I was also pleased to learn, as Andrew has mentioned, about the parole inclusion that was detailed in one of the newspapers last week. I think that that's vitally important, as I hope we're looking at efforts to seek other ways in which to keep people out of the system who aren't convicted of serious felonies, people on parole, but there are people who commit crimes in the subways who really should not be allowed down there, as we've discussed before, particularly people who assault our employees, people who commit assaults against passengers on the trains or buses. And I would hope that district attorneys would cooperate as part of their conditional discharge or probationary pleas to pursue that as well, because I think that that's an important element of keeping things safe. But again, I appreciate that initiative that you announced, and just commenting at this time also on the Eagle program that that was a deliverable of the Ferrer Prendergast administration here. A very important initiative. We spent a lot of time last year discussing, many of us, the bleeding of revenue from the system, as well as the lawless behavior that was existing with people going past. So again, kudos to the Transit Authority Chairman, President, and Bus President, and police efforts to make that program successful. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Capel.
Anyone else? Okay, it's back to Tom Prendergast for Finance. Are we still solvent?
Yes. Preliminary 2012 New York City Transit fare box revenue was $3.709 billion, $54.2 million above the estimate, due mostly to smaller than expected revenue loss from Sandy. The average non-student fare in 2012 was $1.65. Preliminary operating expenses before depreciation and other than pension and post-employee pension and benefits costs were below the estimate by $103.1 million, or 1.5%. Labor expenses were lower by $66.8 million, or 1.3%, due largely to favorable health and welfare rates and underruns in pension on other fringe benefits and payroll expenses. Non-labor expenses underran the estimate by $36.3 million, or 2.3%, due mostly to attributable to lower electric power prices, less maintenance material requirements, and higher scrap surplus sales. reduced paratransit completed trips, and lower maintenance contract spending, mostly involving painting and building-related expenses. As for ridership, New York City Transit ridership totaled $2.326 billion, 0.4% above the estimate, or 0.1% above if adjusted for Sandy impacts. Average weekday subway ridership was 5.4 million, an increase of 1.8% from 2011, and the highest average weekday subway bus ridership since 1950. Average weekday local bus ridership was 2.1 million, an increase of 0.7% from 2011, and average weekday express bus ridership was 42,000, an increase of 2.3% from 2011. Average weekday paratransit ridership was 30,000, an increase of 4.9%. There were some questions earlier about ridership on the bus side, and although there are a number of factors that do affect ridership, probably the strongest correlator is the economy or the employment factors. That has been historically the case at New York City Transit throughout my entire career. Preliminary January 2013 fare box revenue was $5.1 million, 1.7% below budget. Preliminary January 2013 operating expenses exceeded budget by $1.4 million, 0.3%. Darrell Irick will now give the financial performance report for MTA Bus.
Preliminary full-year 2012 fare box revenues for MTA Bus was $180.8 million, which is $2.6 million, or 1.5% better than the final estimate. The average non-student average fare was $1.68. For full 2012 preliminary actual MTA Bus non-reimbursable accrued expenses before depreciation and OBEB were $11.7 million, or 2.1% below the final estimate. The performance against estimate represents a combination of favorable non-labor expense underruns of $45 million, offset by unfavorable labor expenses of $34 million. The favorable non-labor expense underrun was primarily due to lower than budgeted spending and favorable timing of payments for maintenance contracts, fuel, and maintenance materials. Labor expenses were unfavorable due to payroll and overtime costs related to Superstorm Sandy and related pension, health, and welfare, and other fringe benefit costs. For overtime, a brief overview of 2012 overtime performance indicates combined bus operations, New York City Transit and MTA Bus, non-reimbursable overtime was $10.5 million higher than the final estimate of $202 million. New York City Transit DOB, or Department of Buses, non-reimbursable overtime was $7.9 million higher than the final estimate of $157 million. MTA Bus Company's non-reimbursable overtime was $2.6 million higher than the final estimate of $45 million. These results include both scheduled and unscheduled overtime. After accounting for Superstorm Sandy and Winter Storm activities, the remaining overrun for bus operations was $6.6 million, or 3.3%. Other than weather-related situations, the main causes of the 2012 overtime overruns were primarily related to absentee coverage due to either vacant budgeted position or lower than anticipated employee availability. In addition, the strategic use of overtime to initiate a sustained and comprehensive preventive maintenance program to improve bus reliability contributed to the overrun. This investment substantially improved MDBF performance over the 2011 levels. For ridership, full year 2012 preliminary MTA bus ridership totaled $119 million, which is 0.9% or 700,000 higher than the final estimate, despite Superstorm Sandy. Preliminary 2012 average weekday local bus ridership was 363,000, an increase of 2.3% from 2011 levels. Preliminary 2012 average weekday express bus ridership was 34,000, a slight increase of 0.4% from 2011 levels. Preliminary 2012 average weekend local bus ridership on Saturdays and Sundays combined was 364,000, an increase of 4.2% over 2011. This concludes the MTA bus finance and ridership reports.
Thank you again, Darrell. Chuck?
You indicated that a portion, at least, of the overtime was to provide coverage. Between 2012 and a comparable period now, do you have as many bus drivers or less?
That number hasn't changed. It's pretty level at this point.
So then why would you have...
Maybe I missed.
Do you have as
misunderstood the
many
question.
drivers or less drivers? The reason I'm asking is you had to provide additional coverage through the use of overtime.
Right.
Did you have to do that? If you had the same number of people last year, did you have to do the same thing then?
Darrell, let me, Commissioner, I'll respond on behalf of Darrell. Over here.
Where?
Over here. When we started the year last year, we had hundreds of vacancies. Those vacancies were filled. There were training classes practically every couple of weeks, both in Department of Bus and MTA Bus. We were at full head count on the bus operator side later at the end of the year. In fact, that was also to ramp up for the service investments in January. So we did start the prior year, 2012, substantially under on bus operators. And a lot of overtime in the first half of the year was vacancy coverage related.
That was Tom Del Sorbo, who we wisely provided with a microphone. Okay, capital program.
Seymour Portes?
Seymour Portes is filling in for Fred Smith. Welcome.
Thank you. As you just said, Seymour Portes represented Fred Smith, who could not be here this morning. Looking at the capital program result, commitment during January 2013 totaled $335.5 million, including the 2013 track and switch reconstruction program throughout the subway system, the modernization of the Roosevelt interlocking at the Queens Boulevard line, and the overcoat painting of the elevated structures from the portal north of 3rd Avenue, East 149th Street, to East 180 on the White Plains Road line in the Bronx. Meanwhile, during January, an $8.5 million project to reconstruct segment of track on the Lexington Avenue line was completed. With that, I will take any questions.
Any questions?
Seymour, when do you anticipate the start of the repainting of the White Plains Road elevated from 149th Street to East 180th? I saw it yesterday, and it's in dire need.
I will get back to you. I will get back to you on that.
Okay.
I don't have the
Thank
answer
you.
today.
All right, thank you. You can fill in for Fred Smith anytime. Procurements with Steve Pelosi. Where are you?
Good morning.
Oh, there
Plachaki. Polish name, Plachaki.
Didn't I say that?
Close.
Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Good morning. The procurement package, which presents New York City Transit, MTA Bus, and MTACC procurements, includes 23 actions totaling $212.3 million in expenditures. I'd like to highlight 2 ratifications included in this month's agenda. The first is an award in the amount of $53 million to J-Track LLC for the emergency work to restore the A line at Broad Channel in the Rockaways. The work ranges from the initial cleanup following Superstorm Sandy to the repair and replacement of damaged track, signal, and other equipment. The second item in the amount of $49.6 million was awarded to Sprague Operating Resources LLC for the critical supply of fuel for non-revenue and certain paratransit vehicles. The previous contractor, Metro Fuel, was and is unable to supply product and ultimately filed for bankruptcy. Sprague successfully provided fuel to New York City Transit on Metro's behalf for a period that ultimately included the aftermath of Superstorm Sandy, during which the marketplace for fuel was severely compromised. Alternate sources were researched in the marketplace, including city and state contracts with other suppliers, none of which were viable alternatives. An agreement was reached with Sprague for continued supply at pricing slightly higher than Metro. Funding for this contract with Sprague will come from monies remaining in the Metro contract. I ask for your approval of the actions in the agenda.
All right, we have a motion to approve the procurements, which are in Section 5 of our book. Any questions on any of the procurements? Chuck?
I discern from that paragraph is that the contractor started to do the work, found that the switch or whatever it was didn't fit, and then they had to go and do something else.
Correct.
Now my question is, what did the change cost us? we have to pay for the other switch?
Well, what's happening here is that under the base contract, we were providing switch machines, 16 switch machines. What ultimately ended up is when we went out to the field, we saw a condition which could not accommodate utilizing the existing switch layout. So when they went out there, all we're paying for now is the actual replacement of the switch layout, not any additional switch machines.
So that whatever cost went into providing for the switches that didn't fit, that's not our fault.
No. As a matter of fact, the switches, we're going to continue to use the original 16 switch machines. All we're doing is replacing the track work that they actually interface with. That's the only extra.
Second aspect.
Any further questions? Andrew? Oh, you have another one, Chuck? Were you finished? Oh, go. All right,
I was under the impression that the rebuilding of the North Channel Bridge and the right-of-way to the Rockaways was an in-house job, and it's not, apparently.
It was never an in-house job. That's an out-of-face reconstruction. They had to drive sheet piles, had to bring in a lot of fill in the form of ballast. No, we had to go to a heavy railroad construction contractor to do that work, much like Metro North did for aspects of what they lost up in Port Jervis. Yes.
Has the contractor been given a time frame in which to complete this job?
As soon as possible. I mean, it was go as fast as you can to get the service restored, and now we're in the final. We've got quite a bit of work now on the signal and communication side.
Okay, thanks.
Joe and Seymour, can I ask you to turn off your mics if you don't mind when you get a chance? Thanks. You have another question, Chuck?
Yeah, I have two, if I may. On page 5.18, City Transit is planning a migration to a newer version of HASTA software which will operate with Windows 7. We're at Windows 8. What are we doing there?
Excuse me?
This is supposed to be compatible
Outdated,
with Windows 7.
Version of Windows.
The new Windows version is 8.
Yes, we're in the process of migrating to 7 right now, all right? And
why don't we skip 7 and go right to 8?
That's being considered in terms of whether or not we're going to move to Windows 8. But right now, we're planning to move to 7. We're in the process of testing portions of 8.
So we'll go to 7, even though 8's the currently used one?
Yeah, but 8 is not universally accepted by a lot of people yet. I didn't use it for my law firm.
I did for mine.
Okay, well, you're better software than we are.
We try and keep up with the times, Mark. The last part, if I may, is I'm delighted by the choice of words. If you look at 5.7, quote, based upon effective competition, comma, which is a new inclusion of language, CJC's pricing was found to be fair. If you look at the number of people who, quote, competed for the Cosentino contract, it started with 8, 3 got out, 2 others were bounced out, and by the time you got finished, you were down to 2. What was the competition?
Well, we're actually down to 3, but one of the contractors effectively said they weren't able to stick up with provide the resources. You want to know the reasons why they bounced out?
Nice, yeah.
Well, in some instances, I think it's actually in paragraph 3 of the proposal. It says that 3 of the consultant firms received the RFP. Some of the other 5 firms were not recommended because the potential conflicts of interest, organizational conflicts of interest that were there.
Because they do business now with MTA.
Correct.
So that if I do business with agency A of MTA, I have a conflict of interest by doing business with agency B?
No. This is for New York City Transit and MTA Bus. So if you do business, if you're a consultant for those firms, we don't want you overseeing that work when you're doing soil consultant. In other words, looking over your own work.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, the procurements have been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much, Steve. Where am I?
Norm Silverman.
Oh, Norm Silverman on
Service changes, MTA Bus.
Good morning. I'd like to call your attention to 2 MTA bus service changes for committee information within the agenda. The first is a staff summary authorizing that a public hearing be held on a proposed service revision. In this case, the revision is part of a joint effort by MTA Bus, New York City Transit, New York City DOT, and the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey to improve transit access to LaGuardia Airport. The hearing would address the establishment of a new direct service entitled the Q70 Limited, connecting regional transportation hubs in Northeast Queens, specifically Woodside and Jackson Heights, with LaGuardia Airport. At Woodside, new connection would be provided to the 7 Express train and the LIRR Main and Port Washington lines, offering fast airport access from Midtown, as well as Eastern Queens, Nassau, and Suffolk. At Jackson Heights, a more direct and faster airport connection would now be provided for the 7 local EF, MR subway services, as well as a number of local bus routes. In concert with the establishment of this new direct airport service, we would shorten the current Q33 route so it would no longer travel within the airport. Instead, it would have a terminus adjacent to the airport where convenient transfer connection to the local Q72 service can be made for the low volume of local customers who use it to access the airport, while retaining and improving the Q33 route's primary function as a neighborhood subway feeder service. We believe that this subway service element, in conjunction with other service initiatives being implemented, will provide for greatly improved regional access to LaGuardia Airport. We would plan to hold the hearing in April with proposed implementation in September 2013. The second item is a staff summary detailing routine adjustments in bus schedules. In this case, in April 2013, we'll be revising the frequency and/or span on a total of 4 routes in conformance with board-approved loading guidelines. This is a routine process done 4 times per year at a minimum to match service to current ridership and reflects both service increases and decreases. Any questions?
Any questions? Oh, okay, even non-committee members. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. What is DOT or the Port Authority doing to improve service here? It looks like we're running a route to the airport. Anyway.
Well, in terms of the port, we're coordinating with them. One of the key issues is bus stop availability and curb space at the airport. And we're working with them very closely, transit and MTA bus, to make sure that we can do the things that are necessary to make it work better.
Oh, okay.
As far as
where are the problems with the 33 stops at LaGuardia is not a good location. So
well,
that's
again,
locations, yeah.
with this increase in service, we have to have a little bit more space, so that we're working very carefully with them to push the transit agenda at the airport.
Is City DOT doing anything to help move the M60? Because I know I even talked to you about this, how awful the service is in terms of delays.
This is what Norm is talking about. It's really been a joint effort between MTA Bus and Transit Bus and DOT to look at LaGuardia and the Port Authority, because they're the operator of the airport. So this particular staff summary is about a public hearing request for a hearable item. There's other improvements on the M60 that we'll talk to the board about later in the year as we get closer to their implementation.
Okay, thank you. Andrew?
I think the Q70 route's going to probably prove to be one of your most popular routes. Long Islanders can, go to Woodside and get a quick bus service to the airport. I think that's going to be a fabulous thing. Just one question. Are you going to be posting signs after the public hearing along the route of the Q33 to notify neighborhood residents that it no longer goes into the airport? I assume you are.
Oh, sure. That's a normal part of any service change, that we always identify to the affected customers what the change is, yes.
Okay, thanks.
All right, that brings us to special presentations and follow-up reports. I want to warn you, we're going to discuss rat sterilization, so if anybody has a queasy stomach, get ready. Okay, Tom, you ready?
Section 7 of this month's agenda begins with our regular status report in the MetroCard program. It's in there for your reading. The following 3 reports for New York City Transit, Staten Island Rapid Transit, and MTA Bus are presented in accordance with the MTA's annual budget procedures. These reports present the 2013 adopted budget and the February financial plan for the 2013 through 16 period. They also reflect the inclusion of MTA adjustments that were presented in the November financial plan, which was adopted by the board in December of 2012. These adjustments mostly represent the inclusion of the March 1st fare increase, a $1 green fee charge for each new MetroCard purchased, Tropical Storm Sandy estimated losses and insurance recoveries, re-estimates of electric power expenses, and the reassignment of advertising revenue receipts beginning on January 1st, 2013 to MTA headquarters. We're also including the 2012 year-end safety report and the 2013 safety agenda, which provides the 2012 year-end figures for customer injuries, collisions, and employee lost time, restricted duty injuries with New York City Transit and MTA bus safety goals for 2013. I would now like to turn the floor over to Tom Lamb, who will give a presentation on the presentation that will give a presentation, as the chair mentioned, on a program that a pilot program we are going to initiate to try to deal with the rat population problem in the subways. Tom?
Thank you very much.
Yes, I'm passing out frequently asked questions and answers on the subject. Thank you very much. Good morning. I am Tom Lamb. I'm the Chief of Innovation and Technology from the Office of Strategic Innovation and Technology. Joining me this morning is Dr. Loretta Mayer, to my left, the Chairman of the Board of Senestech Incorporated and co-inventor of ContraPest, the technology we will briefly discuss this morning. We would like to share with you some interesting research work in the Office of Strategic Innovation and Technology is hosting that, if successful, could hold a significant benefit for our ongoing efforts to manage the rat populations in our stations and transit facilities. This technology, if successful, could complement our current strategies of poisoning and exclusion for rodent management. It's a field study sponsored by the National Institute of Health. The field study will take place in selected subway trash rooms. The company selected by the National Institute of Health for this field study work is Senestech Incorporated, an Arizona-based technology company. Senestech has already conducted successful research on rat population fertility management in a number of countries in agricultural settings where the rat is a serious threat to the food supply. This slide indicates countries where Senestech technology has been successfully applied. I think it's important to mention that in some of these countries, the rat is often part of the human population food chain. The Senestech technology has been welcomed in these countries because the active ingredients in the bait are completely metabolized by the rat, is safe for humans, and is not passed from the rat along the food chain. Rats are mammals, and the female is born with a finite number of eggs. Senestech technology targets the female's ovaries, more specifically the follicles within the ovaries required for reproduction. Senestech products are designed to accelerate natural egg loss, resulting in sterility. Designed to be delivered to the rat population orally in a bait, it produces treatment that is 100% effective. It results in permanent sterility, and most importantly, Senestech products are designed to be absolutely safe for humans, predatory food chain participants, and the environment overall. The efficacy or effectiveness of ContraPest, the Senestech rat fertility management product, is being tested in this field study. Consumption of the oral bait will affect the natural process of follicular atresia, or ovarian follicle failure, in female rats and mice. ContraPest is not a birth control pill or contraceptive product. It is an oral bait product that leads to permanent sterility in the female rat. New York City Transit is hosting the field study by providing a few trash rooms with environments because we feel that it's ContraPest, a product with these characteristics, improving the management of the rat population through sterility, might allow us to improve our strategic tool set combating the rodent populations in our transit facilities. To make the comparison clear, ContraPest is not lethal to the rat. It's not a poison. ContraPest does not affect non-target species or humans. ContraPest is environmentally friendly, and the approach does not create what we call rat population rebound. If you kill the rats, they rebound. Kill the rats, they rebound. Okay? New York City faces a difficult rat problem. The target species, the Norway rat, can be sexually mature in 8 to 12 weeks and produce 8 to 12 pups per litter. They can have litters 2 to 7 times a year and can live 5 to 12 months depending on conditions and food supply in the subway. The National Institute of Health Phase 2 study has 2 goals. The first, establish the safety of ContraPest chemosterilant bait. This has been done and completed by Senestech in advance of the proposed field study work. The second is to establish the efficacy of ContraPest in an environment consisting of subway rat populations in the New York City trash rooms. In summary, we want everyone to understand that expectations should be managed. This is research, and a lot can affect the outcome. The potential impact of contrapest on the New York subway trash room rat population is still an unknown. We certainly hope to learn more. A successful field study would be followed by other inference-based studies, including potentially locations in the city sewers, possibly the city's largest source of rat populations. New York City Transit is acting as a host to the efforts and will provide some subway trash rooms with known populations of very hungry rats. In addition, we have established a list of frequently asked questions, which we've been distributed this morning, and is available on our website, along with a short clip on this field study. Thank you for your time, consideration. Dr. Mayer and I are here to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Lamb. Does anybody have any serious questions? Go right ahead, Andrew.
Has this formula been tried elsewhere?
Yes, it has. It has been tried elsewhere. It's been tried overseas.
In any transportation systems?
No.
The rickshaws of Indonesia.
Well, okay, why don't you turn you can answer that.
The compound was primarily developed for an agriculture use. The only transportation that, to my knowledge, that has ever been impacted has been the rickshaws of Indonesia. We really haven't done anything in an urban setting. This is a research project that is quite extraordinary for us. And the National Institutes of Health, when they reviewed this project, determined that it had the highest level of impact if successful. And in the words of Albert Einstein, if we knew what we were doing, they wouldn't call it research. So thank you.
Sure.
And this gets sprinkled along the track beds and throughout the subway system? Is that how you would do this, or just known areas where there's a large rat population, or entire system?
What we will do is we will work closely with the knowledge base of the ecology of the New York City rat. We will not introduce anything that is novel. For example, the way poison is distributed in bait boxes, we'll use the same environment. We will, however, test many different delivery devices to get the most successful one.
Yeah, it's actually not sprinkled. It's contained in a bait box, so it's not randomly distributed. Sir.
If a human female was to eat contrapest, what would happen by accident?
Well, it's quite sweet, quite salty, and there's a lot of fat. She would probably gain weight from the fat. There is absolutely no evidence. This compound has been tested in non-human primates. It is ineffective at reducing fertility in any way. When I've been studying this compound for over 22 years, and I probably have the highest incidence of pregnant graduate students of anybody in academia.
So what you're saying implies that it would result in the opposite. But I don't know. Well,
I have been concerned of that data.
There's an antidote. Thank you very much. Standard follow-up reports with Tom.
We have a number of standard follow-up reports in the book. You can read them. The only one I want to bring to your attention is the continued good performance in the elevator and escalator division. It should be noted that both elevator and escalator performance exceeded our availability goal for the 5th straight quarter. Elevator availability was 97.5% in the 4th quarter, and escalator availability was 96%. It's an area we're going to continue to keep a focus on because they're extremely important elements of the transportation system here at New York City Transit.
Chuck? I note that in several of the privately owned buildings, repeated cautions, notices, violations, and the like have been issued because of their failure to maintain. What is the follow-up procedure? In one case, I saw there were 243 violations or notices given.
The follow-up procedure is basically one under which the terms of the contract we have with the outside entity that we try to enforce the provisions of them. It's a combination of work by MTA Legal and New York City Transit Legal.
There is no enforcement mechanism, I take it, by which they can get a summons or a violation in any of the courts?
Most of these, maybe Marty can speak to it, but most of these are easements granted by the city in return for some kind of zoning exemption. And I think we have found, but again, Marty Schnabel can speak to it more directly. I think we have
get them
found
under the building code if that's the basis.
I think we have found. I think we have found that some of these easements are very difficult to enforce.
There are easements in which we have the ability through the Department of City Planning to take action in connection with zoning rights that have been granted the party who gave us the easement. And that's one of the things we've done in a few of these cases.
Department of Buildings has statutory authority to enforce the zoning ordinance, and a building inspector can employ a summons or a violation to enforce that. So I suggest you might be in touch with the Commissioner of Buildings.
Yeah, we actually have been in contact with the building department in connection with several of these easements.
Chuck, as you know, was a former buildings commissioner of New York. Just in case you didn't know that, I should remind you. Alan?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. On the January meeting, there was a presentation on platform safety that was pretty comprehensive, and a discussion that there would be follow-up in the future. I was wondering, do we have a timetable on that? And the second part of my question is that I know that the Transit Authority does some for employees of both Transit Authority and other city agencies, track safety training of some kind where they bring people down. I think they also did it for the media or some members of the media in the past month. Is there any thought to a video that could be accessed that if people found themselves on the track, that things that they should try to do?
The primary reason for the track safety training is to give people who we want to authorize to go down on the track to be down there. It is not in any way, shape, or form targeted for people who may find themselves on the right-of-way. The best thing for them to do is basically remain where they are and have others seek out the rail control center and stop all train traffic in the area. Because to do otherwise with any kind of, off the internet or any kind of reading type training would be problematic, if not dangerous for them. With respect to your first question, we've already met with one of the vendors on the detection, right-of-way detection system, and we want to basically develop a program where we can do a feasibility study and then possibly a pilot, if it passes muster, that we could actually do it on both the platform edge doors as well as the intrusion detection system. And there was a meeting held, at least one meeting, probably two meetings on intrusion detection already. And we will come back to you with a time frame, because one of the things we haven't done is adequately close those issues out.
All right, folks, finally we turn to MTA Capital Construction Projects report from Michael. We usually, of course, leave this to last, but in the more than 11 years that I have been doing this, I want you all to know that I have come to respect, admire, and appreciate Michael more and more every day. Anybody who can run Fulton Street refurbishment, the 2nd Avenue subway, the 7-line extension, and East Side access, and do everything else that he does, has an unbelievable workload on his plate, and he does it with distinction, with a great deal of brilliance and diligence, and I just want you all to know how I have become more and more respectful of what he has accomplished. Michael.
Mark, my mother would have been very pleased to hear you. Anyway, I would like to actually walk you through a couple of the projects, Fulton Center being the first one. And I'm going to focus today on the Corbin building. This is a building that was built in 1889, 141 feet tall. It was, at the time, the tallest building. It was the first skyscraper in New York. And
It is actually, it shows you more or less where it is right now. It's just next to the existing transit center that is being completed. The building, prior to its restoration, just to get a sense, this is how it looked. Pretty dingy. This is another picture of the same. Nothing to be proud about. When we keep going, you can get a sense of how it was. Today, and I'm going to just flip over this one, we're going to start to see, we finished the restoration on the outside. We removed everything. There's still some more work to be done, but we expect at the end of this month to be done with that. You can see the restoration. It looked pretty much like as if it was in Florence. It is not. You know, the details of the terracotta that the architect at the time, Francis Kimball, was very well known about, it's just kind of are coming back, and you can actually see that. It's just a lot of details that all have been put back together. Everything was done in accordance to the various specs that we received. This is going to be the new entrance to the Fulton Center from John Street. This is a picture of the stairway. This is a historical stairway that was in effect redone in place. Everything was stripped and then refinished. This is how the interior looks. Again, it's supposed to be basically the way it was. This is an unimpeded look from the top of the building all the way to the other side. As it happens, nothing will impede the view on the World Trade Center side. Nothing will be built there, so you can actually see that. You know, we had some fireplaces that were in place, so everything was kind of pulled together the same way. This is the escalators that are coming from under the 4 or 5 going in effect all the way up. You can see the arches, the inverted arches. These were there in order to basically prevent from the uplift. And one of the things that I would like to point out, what you see here, is actually the original foundation. We built a new foundation that goes about 30 feet down, so the whole building has been underpinned. That is code word for we put in place a foundation in with very modern technology, buckets and pick and shovel. It was done manually. They had to go down about 40 feet and a 4x5, dig it down, put a foundation. We monitored the building during that time. The building kind of moved from side to side. Every time we put 18 new foundations. So anytime we underpin on one side, the building moved back and forth until it was stabilized. So this is what we get. And this is a picture of the Fulton Transit as it looks today. Okay? We all be done on time, June next year. And we will have, in effect, a master leasee on board this summer, and we'll be within budget. Next would be the number.
Can I ask you
Yes,
how much
I'm
the
sorry.
Corbin building reconstruction has cost?
If you must. I was the underpinning about $17 million. The refurbishing, I would say, about $75 million. So and then we purchased it for $34 million. Somewhere about $130 million.
Did you testify for or against landmarking the building?
Is it a landmark?
No, it is actually is on the register. And just as a point, the New York Landmark Conservancy has awarded us the Lucy Moses Award for preservation on this one. And it will happen, I think, if I'm correct, on April 29th or 30th, one of those.
It's not a New York City landmark?
No, it is not.
Oh, good.
But it will be there, cannot be touched. Trust me on that one. Okay. Is it okay? Then can I continue? Okay. Number 7 extension. And number 7 extension, as of now, we are 82% done with construction. We have closed out a number of contracts, and right now we are going to have substantial completion on a couple of contracts. Keep going, please. Next, show me. Okay, this is the low-rise escalator to the street level that are being installed as we speak. The interesting, I'm focusing on something a little different here. This is switch gear, and what we have done, and just Bogdan, just keep flipping. Keep going. Keep going. More. Okay. I just wanted to show you. This is something that we have never really talked about it. Under 11th Avenue, we have built this. This building that is going to have all the air handling and the switch gear. This is been built, and we took advantage of that, and DOT took advantage of that to, in effect, remove a bridge. This used to be a bridge, and now we filled it in, and 11th Avenue is no longer on a viaduct; it's actually sitting directly on fill, and we're able to use the space under that to house all our electrical and air handling. I'm just pointing at this is kind of an interesting thing. Again, the project right now is we have one more contract that is that Site J that is going to be completed. It's 97% complete. We're just now doing some work. By May, we'll have a substantial completion. And the last thing that we are now pushing is the systems contract that, and we are right now expecting to finish it again by June of next year. We do have some issues that we are working through, and we expect them to be able to be mitigated so we can actually have everything done by June of 2014. This is actually the one that will be finished now in May. It just gives you, this is the Hudson Boulevard. That's how it looks like right now. This is the rendering for the Site J. That will be the entry, the main entry, and that's when it's done, kind of looks like that. So just wanted to get your, just to see where we, and there are two entrances.
Michael, that's going to be a new street, Hudson Boulevard?
Yes, yes.
That's named already, huh?
Has been named. You know, this is the way it is. You know, this is just a rendering of how it's going to look when done. I guess there were always naming opportunities. I would like to move to 2nd Avenue.
Before you leave that,
yes, I'm sorry,
Dr. Radluchanu, what steps have been taken to provide hardening so that there is minimized any Hurricane Sandy type of water problem?
Everything that we have done, as I think that we have retested it. I think they were well within the 500-year storm design standards. We had no damage during Sandy, so we believe that we're fine.
And let me first associate myself with the comments that the chairman made concerning the excellence of the work you do. Let me ask you this. During the proceedings leading up to the construction of the convention center, the CEQA reports and the like showed that electric eels were able to come in at high tide at the convention center, with the result that at that point UDC used plastic plumbing as the only way of dealing with the possibility of shorts on the plumbing. Do you foresee any issues at all in terms of that problem? Because you're right cheek by jowl with the convention center.
Yes, I must say that I have not known about this issue. I'm going to look into it. I don't expect to do it, but I'd be glad to look at the report.
I expect we'll have a contrapest for those eels coming up soon.
I represented the state on that.
Okay, 2nd Avenue. I'm going to start with 72nd Street because this is has been for many people a controversial thing. We finished as of the 28th of February all blasting, no more blasting in any part of it, and. Yes, no, 72nd. No. 72nd Street. No. 72nd Street. Blasting has been done. We expect to start demolition of the mock house at 72nd Street in May. It will be gone, and then the second one will be starting at the end of the summer. So this year, both mock houses will be gone on the 72nd Street station. Basically, I would like to just show you some pictures. We are now concreting the station. These are the concrete walls. It's a huge cavern. It's a 1,500 linear feet, the cavern. So that's a really long cavern. This is some of the pictures that you can see there. We are still waterproofing, and we are now forming work as we move. Again, we are basically building the invert and anything that is under the invert. And I'm going to go to 86th Street. That is one of the stations that we're still blasting. And this is a picture of the basically one of the ancillary where we are mucking right now. Keep going. This is the bench excavation. Again, this is all being blasted. Keep going. This shows you the drilling, that we are, in order to get blasting, we need to drill to create the locations. This is, again, the portal excavation. You can see the drilling that will be, actually all of these areas will be blasted, including here. You can see the same way. This is the mucking operation. I must say that the contractor on this particular job is doing an outstanding job. You walk there and you see no muck immediately after a blast. So this is really very, very efficient. Now I want to show you a blast video that we took. It's just kind of fun to see. Control blast. It's thinking. Gosh. Whoop.
The blast.
I think the sound is not on.
I can hear. It doesn't matter. It sounds just.
This is already people on the other side actually checking the, and then we're speeding it up to see the people that are actually going to. Yes, they do work quickly. I'm sorry that the noise is actually makes it even more spectacular than what you could see. What was that? Anyway, so I just wanted to show you that the project is, again, well within its budget, and we project it to end of 2016. There are challenges, but at this point, things are moving well. The same is basically to be said, as I said, for number 7. I'm done.
Thank you, Dr. H. Any further questions? Is there a motion to adjourn? All in favor? Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, senior staff.